Mr. Noel, please identify yourself for the record.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, committee members, Mike Noel, retired state police, Lieutenant Colonel, Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. Representative Villio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Noel, you were appointed as Chief of Staff under former Colonel Reeves, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And it was your role to oversee internal affairs,
Yes, ma'am.
the disciplinary review committee,
Yes, ma'am.
promotions.
Up to the rank of lieutenant.
You participated in Monday morning briefings.
Yes.
You approved personnel transfers,
Yes.
and you assisted lieutenant colonels with the day-to-day operations of the state police, correct?
Correct.
All lieutenant colonels reported to you in the chain of command.
Correct.
In May 2019, Lieutenant Colonel Oliphant was over patrol, was he not?
Correct. Yes.
And Lieutenant Colonel Adam White was over the bureau.
That is correct.
And who notified you about the in-custody death of Ronald Greene? Was it Oliphant or White?
I do not recall. It was like, well, I don't recall. I would have to look back, or you could look back at my emails.
You would
But
agree
it could have been either one.
You would agree that both Lieutenant Colonels Oliphant and White should have been engaged and receiving periodic updates so that they could keep you and former Colonel Reeves advised and apprised of the investigation, correct?
They would have been, yes.
Sure. So both Oliphant and White reported directly to you for situational awareness regarding the Greene death investigation, correct?
That is correct.
And how soon after the death of Ronald Greene did you and the other lieutenant colonels meet to view the body-worn cameras and the in-car cameras involving his death?
It was within a week or two.
And how many videos, how much footage did y'all review within that week or two?
I believe it was only one time we met to view the videos that I recall, and I think we saw and I know earlier you mentioned several different videos. There was a short video, I think, and then the long video that had the bulk of the incident. And we, at that time, had not seen Lieutenant Clary's video.
And you knew there were more officers on the scene of that incident than the number of videos you viewed, correct?
I don't know that we discussed who all was on the scene. I don't know that that was necessarily discussed.
And did Lieutenant Clary or anybody tell you that Lieutenant Clary was on the scene and had a body camera and should have had video at the time?
No, ma'am.
And did you ask?
No, ma'am.
And who was present? When and where did y'all review? You said you reviewed the videos within about a week of the incident. Where were y'all and who was present?
I don't recall who all was present. Myself, Colonel White, I believe Colonel Oliphant was there, Colonel Reeves, and I don't know if Major Brown was in attendance or if he was on the phone.
And like former Colonel Reeves, did you conclude that Mr. Greene's death was awful but lawful?
That was not a phrase, it's a phrase you like to throw around. I guess someone said it. I don't know.
I don't like to throw it around. It was said. So.
I agree. I understand that.
Okay.
The position I took was we're conducting an investigation, a criminal investigation. Let's find out all the facts before we make a determination. We're going to turn this over to the district attorney, who, again, will have the ultimate responsibility to determine should criminal charges be filed. So was it awful but lawful? I don't know. It wasn't pretty. But sometimes police work isn't. So we didn't dissect every video that was at the scene. We left that to the experts, the investigators, who you heard from earlier today.
Have you seen Lieutenant Clary's body cam?
I have not.
It was Major Bob Brown's role to provide weekly updates to Colonel Reeves, you, Attorney Faye Morrison, and the Lieutenant Colonels on all significant investigations, correct?
Either he or Lieutenant Colonel White.
And was the investigation into Ronald Greene's death included in those weekly updates?
It would have likely been. We, especially the first several weeks, you have to understand, state police is a very complex organization. We have probably at any given time 100 criminal investigations ongoing. That's just on the criminal side. You have all the patrol activity, and then you have all the support activity that most people don't recognize with state police, such as the crime lab, criminal records, gaming enforcement, So there's a lot of things going on a daily basis, and those weekly briefings would only cover portions of that. So I think we had briefings or updates for several weeks, but at some point you're waiting for the investigation to be finished. You're waiting for the coroner to finish his report, and so that all that can be turned into the DA. So when those slowed down or stopped, I couldn't tell you.
Then Major Kane was present for those weekly updates.
I don't believe he would have necessarily been in there. As he mentioned, he and our at the time is either Captain Hodges or Major Cezanne would give us the intel brief for that week, or what activities or events that are upcoming, anything from the previous week. Major Kane or one of his subordinates would give us an update on anything from their shop, public affairs, and then they would leave. And then the lieutenant colonels, Miss Morrison, would stay and get into where each lieutenant colonel would give updates on significant events and going on in their sections.
Now, you retired from the state police when you were handpicked by Governor Edwards to be the chairman for the Louisiana Gaming Board in June 2020. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that was 14 months after the death of Ronald Greene and about a month after the federal lawsuit was filed by the Greene family, correct?
I'm not aware when the lawsuit was filed, but it was 13 months.
Yeah, well, a year after the incident. Of course, I'm sure you're aware that plaintiffs in Louisiana have a year to file a lawsuit. So year after the incident would have been in May, and you were appointed in June, so that would have been about a month after the lawsuit, correct? So when did you have your cell phone wiped clean?
When I retired.
And who made that decision, sir?
I turned the phone in, and as far as I knew, that was a standard process. I turned it in on June 3rd, I believe, of 2020, and
so for a complex organization like you talked about, y'all sure were lacking in policies as regards to evidence, weren't you?
in evidence in which way?
In text messages.
That you're assuming there are some text messages.
Well, certainly don't know, do we?
I can't tell you whether there are or there aren't. I don't know that, and I understand you. I mean, I do. But when I turned the phone in when I retired, that was, I guess, customary. I had a phone. I think when I was appointed deputy assistant superintendent chief of staff, I was issued a phone, a Samsung. Had problems with it. I ended up switching to the iPhone. Prior to that, though, I didn't have a state phone. I used my personal phone. We were given a stipend. I think at some point in the early 2000s, I probably had a state cell phone. You know, it fluctuated over time, but we had no policy, right or wrong, on what to do with phones and the text messages. There was, that I was aware of.
Well, I'm just curious. You're not oblivious to the 2017 Las Vegas side trip issue of text messages having been deleted, correct? You were aware of that.
I recall some of that, yes.
Sure. And moreover, while you were retiring from one state agency and appointed by the governor to another. So it would seem you would need those contacts. So doesn't seem to make sense that you would have your phone wiped clean, at least not to me.
The contacts that I had were all in my personal phone. And I guess you could say I don't know if there's a duplicate or not, because I really don't know.
Do you still have the personal phone that you had?
No.
You just changed providers or what?
No, I upgraded my phone.
Okay, and did you take the SIM card and then transfer it to a new phone?
I don't. Whatever AT&T does with it.
Surely, as chief of staff, you must have anticipated litigation would arise from the Ronald Greene death, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And who was responsible for issuing a preservation of evidence memo in anticipation of litigation?
That we relied on our legal section to do that.
Okay. And do you know when that preservation letter was issued?
I've never recalled seeing one.
Now, knowing the importance of the preservation of evidence to include emails, text messages, written journals, etc., at what point did you not stop to think that you were potentially destroying evidence when you had your cell phone wiped clean?
It never occurred to me that my text message were evidence in the Ronald Greene case.
Now, you worked for a year as chairman of the gaming board, and only the night before your Senate confirmation hearing, you resigned from your position, right?
That is correct.
Now, what was the pay for that position?
About 150.
Why did you resign?
I had a call the afternoon before the scheduled confirmation hearing from Matthew Block, who had informed me that he had been getting, his phone had been blowing up, and that certain members on the Senate had were going to try and block my confirmation. I then the next morning went to meet with him, the governor, and discussed it. I was again informed that they were going to try, some members on the Senate were going to try and block me, and that if they couldn't block me, they were going to block Colonel Davis.
And
So I said, at that point, I said, it's unnecessary. This, I'm going to resign, and because that didn't make any sense to me.
Isn't it true that your former position as chief of staff that you had to approve all internal affairs investigations?
That is correct.
Why did you fail to authorize an internal affairs investigation regarding the in-custody death of Ronald Greene? Knowing full well that there were numerous policy violations committed by troopers.
We did not initiate an internal affairs investigation because of the ongoing criminal investigation. And it was our policy at the time is to wait and let the criminal investigation conclude, let the district attorney make a determination on the case, and then we could proceed with the administrative investigation.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Vilio. And what was the reason that the governor, Matthew Block, told you that you were not going to be confirmed in the Senate, or they were going to try to block you in the Senate?
I believe members of the Black Caucus were unhappy with the fact that I was former chief of staff during the incident, and that that I was a chairman, and that I moved out of my previous job into a new one.
Gotcha. And then the other part of the discussion was if they couldn't block you, then they were going to block Colonel Davis from being.
That was the impression I was given.
So why did you withdraw at that moment? You just didn't
Well,
want.
because one, I knew Colonel Davis didn't have enough, or I was fairly certain he didn't have enough years to retire. Now that didn't necessarily mean he had to retire. He could have gone back to his previous rank of captain. But for me, I was going to retire in October of 20, regardless of what happened. That was what my plan was. And so I looked at it as, this was a year of I hadn't even planned to be chairman. So I wasn't married to it. I didn't necessarily need it. So to me, the sensible thing was to tender my resignation.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you. Don't have any questions than that. We appreciate you coming down. I know you had to wait a long time.
That's okay. It is.
do,
Well, we waited out the weather, I think, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think hopefully that was the case. I appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.